News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
KBNU News Time is 4:03. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Law enforcement has determined that a set of bones found by a construction crew in Providence were likely from an early pioneer settler. The skeletal remains were unearthed on Tuesday. Cache County Sheriff's Lieutenant Mickelshan Barshi said a group of employees from LeGrand Johnson Construction Company were replacing fire hydrant lines on the south end of Providence when they found the bones. They were about 4 feet below ground. Deputies were called to the scene and sealed off the area, taking several photographs of the remains. The pictures were sent to the State Forensic Laboratory, where they were confirmed to be human. Barchi explained that a forensic anthropologist visited the construction site the next day and performed several tests on the bones. They were determined to be from the pioneer era and appeared to be intentionally buried at the site. Once the age of the remains was determined and that there was no foul play involved, the case was closed and the bones were turned over to the anthropologist. Barchi says that this is not the first time human remains have been discovered in Cache Valley. Years ago, construction crews on the north end of the valley unearthed an Indian burial ground. KBNU News Time is 4:04. KBNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies, low around 40, and then sunny, lower 70s on Saturday. Sunday, sunny and mid-70s for the high. It's been 69. It's 69 degrees right now at KBNU. Make sure to stop into the Logan location of Mount Logan Laundry to see the new huge washers and dryers. So many more to serve you and get you in and out quicker. Mount Logan Laundry, located in Logan and Brigham City.
My hearing started to go right around the same time my wife started naming off all the upgrades she wanted done on the house. I figured it was selective hearing. To be honest, I was actually pretty upset when it was suggested that I might need hearing aids, but ultimately I knew it was time for a change.
At Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology, we can help you regain the confidence that you're hearing life the way it was meant to be heard.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Visit cachehearing.com for details.
KBNU News Time is 4:05. A week after a swastika was discovered on the campus of Weber State University, similar vandalism was found inside a building on the school's Davis campus in Layton. Weber State officials said a scratched-out swastika was found at 11 a.m. Thursday in the building that houses the Northern Utah Academy for Math, Engineering, and Science. Next to the Nazi symbol was a Star of David etched in the table located in a third-floor hallway. School administrators were notified and the table was removed. The school said in a statement, beyond the defacement of WSU property, the symbol found at WSU Davis does not represent the values and goals of our university. On September 25th, a swastika was found carved into a table inside the Shepherd Union building on the school's main Ogden campus. While the vandalism was discovered on the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur, it was determined that it had been left at least a year prior. Weber State Police are reviewing the latest incident, and no suspects have been identified. And a man was charged with several felony offenses after causing over $19,000 in damages throwing furniture off of the 14th floor of a Salt Lake City hotel. Charging documents stated that officers with the Salt Lake City Police Department were dispatched to the Little America Hotel, located at 500 South Main Street on June 16th, on reports that an individual was throwing furniture from the 14th floor balcony into the pool. Upon arrival, hotel security told a Salt Lake City officer that 44-year-old Jason Molding was staying in room 1422, where he was throwing items from the balcony. The officer responded to the room and attempted to make contact with Molding, but received no answer. After hearing loud sounds coming from the room, the officer and another on-scene officer gained entry into the room, where they found Molding attempting to climb down to the balcony directly below him. using a makeshift rope of tied blankets and bed sheets. Two of the officers ran down to the room below and saw molding on the balcony. One officer attempted to pull molding into the room, while another removed their taser and pointed it towards the subject, who grabbed onto the weapon and tried to pull it away. Molding eventually let go of the taser and attempted to flee officers again, but was restrained and put in handcuffs. The suspect was transported to the hospital for a knee injury. While there, police loosened his hand restraint in order to let medical personnel treat him, at which point Molding grabbed on to one of the officer's firearm holsters and tried to gain access to the gun. The officer removed the suspect's hand and put him back into an arm restraint. While searching Molding's hotel room, police located a blue pill that tested positive for fentanyl. The security director of Little America confirmed that Molding caused over $19,000 in damages during the incident. KBNU News Time is 4:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Know about it. Talk about it. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Remember all the snow we got last winter? Of course you do. Still feels like it just barely melted. Hull Tree Care wants to remind you that before long, the white stuff will be back. And if you don't get your overgrown trees trimmed, Mother Nature will do it for you.
No, not my car.
Hull Tree Care is the preferred choice in northern Utah. They have more experience, they're fast, and they have the best cleanup crew around. Call 760-6587 or 760-6587.
Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Nelson, board-certified, fellowship-trained orthopedic surgeon, and I want to restore your active, pain-free life. I've been an innovator in the treatment of knee pain caused by arthritis and sports injuries for 27 years. I'm the only surgeon in northern Utah to offer Omnibotics, a robotic-assisted knee replacement for your arthritic knee, which has a 97% patient satisfaction rate. Don't live with your knee pain another day. Visit drkeithnelsonortho.com. That's drkeithnelsonortho.com.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cash Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It's a beautiful, really, really beautiful Friday afternoon out there. Hope everyone's enjoying it or about to enjoy it. If you're still at work, I understand.
Probably the last weekend for the vibrant colors in the mountains.
Yeah, this is, and I've been telling everyone this is the weekend for Logan Canyon. I have some friends, some people on the legislative staff, a couple of lawmakers that know that I keep an eye on this kind of thing, and they've asked me, is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? And I told them last weekend was nice. If you made it through Logan Canyon last weekend, you saw quite a bit, but this is going to be the weekend. And then, as Bill said, it's probably over after that based on the weather we have coming and some of the temperatures we have coming. I noticed Sardine Canyon, Blacksmith Fork Canyon, a lot of the trees that have been pretty vibrant the last couple of weeks have already dropped a lot of their leaves. It's one of the, I shouldn't say benefits. There isn't a benefit to a drought year, but one of the tiny little silver linings to a drought year is that you tend to have a longer fall color season, and it's been a very wet year. So how that works is some science that I won't get into here, but USU Extension actually has a really cool YouTube video on this if you want to see it. But it has been quite the 24 hours in Utah politics. We'll talk about it a little bit. A candidate for United States Senate, he joined us here in the studio a few weeks ago, I think it was. Trent Staggs, he's the mayor of Riverton. He is getting his behind handed to him today for a couple of different reasons. And one of the reasons is he put out a press release last night, a panicked, all caps titled press release on the Riverton City letterhead, as if he was putting it out as the mayor of Riverton. He should have been putting it out as United States Senate candidate Trent Staggs, but for whatever reason, he decided to put it out as mayor of Riverton and use the city's logo and letterhead. So he's getting some pretty harsh criticism from other lawmakers and even some big donors in the state, saying that was a foul move. You just don't do that. It's not illegal, but it's in poor taste, to say the least, to use your city resources to try and lend credibility to your run for higher office. So the city council members there in Riverton are not happy with him. The statement itself, though, drew some criticism as well, including from the organization that it was supposedly from. Mayor Staggs of Riverton said that he had gotten a copy of a memo in which ICE had declared Utah a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. And it turns out that this is actually a years-old story, going back to 2016, actually. And it did involve the Utah County, the Washington County, and the Cache County Sheriff's Office in the memo that he attached to his statement declaring. His statement said, I urge Governor Cox, Brad Wilson, Speaker of the House for the time being, and he's also running for Senate. That tells you why Trent did this. His opponent is named in his statement, but not as his opponent because he's sending it again as mayor of Riverton City. But he's obviously campaigning for United States Senate by sending this out because he's calling on his opponent, Speaker of the House Brad Wilson, to do something about this. It was a panicked, it got a lot of social media play, to say the least, ironically mostly from people not in Utah, but professional outrage folks on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok these days too, and the usual players basically. And then, people started digging into this and started looking. I looked myself. We had actually talked to the Cache County Sheriff about this last year. Here at KVNU. It was not the panicked last-minute announcement from ICE that Trent Staggs put it out to be. What it actually was is a decision that was made, again, way back in 2016 in Utah County, 2022 in Cache County, and 2023 in Washington County. And then the ICE memo was from May of 2023, about a month after Washington made it. The ICE memo is basically saying, look, because these three counties have ended their contracts with us, we can't operate in the state the way we have been. ICE had primarily been using Utah as a storage state for those who were being detained for some reason at the border or elsewhere in the United States. And these were folks, these weren't your rank and file asylum seekers or people trying to go under Governor Greg Abbott's barbed wire and floating death traps there in the river along the border of Texas. We're talking about people who these are people with a violent record. These are people that have been arrested. Oftentimes they're arrested for something else. And then it's discovered that they aren't here legally, and there's no plan by anyone to keep these people in the country. But there's still a process, a legal process and more, because we have a constitution, thankfully, that we stick to, unless it's September 11th, 2001, and then we kind of throw that out the window for a little bit with indefinite detention in Guantanamo Bay. But that's a topic for another day. But right now, at least, we're in the mood to honor our own constitution, and that does apply to folks arrested, even if they're here illegally. And it's good that we do this, even though there are some that wish we didn't. It's really good we do. Your constitution can't be, pick and choose. It shouldn't be, at least. So what happens is they're arrested for a serious crime, and then the secondary offense to that crime is that they're here illegally. It goes through the court system, it goes through legal systems, but often what this means is they're here, they have to be detained as this plays out, and it's not safe to just let them out on bond or something like that, because who knows where they'll go, and oftentimes they disappear. So they detain them, and they need to be detained sometimes for a lengthy period of time as the court cases play out and as the deportation process happens, working with other countries where they'll be deported to, who often have an interest in not just having them show up on a plane because they realize this is a person with a violent history or a heinous criminal history of some kind. They want to know when they arrive for various reasons. So it's a lengthy process, and that means that they have to stay in jails for a long time. The problem is the state of Utah doesn't really fund this very well. The federal government doesn't fund this very well. And so these contracts with ICE were stretching sheriff's departments very thin. They were basically causing chaos to a large extent. And this goes through, this is something that goes back through 4 presidents at this point. It also goes, we're talking Biden, Trump, Obama, and Bush Jr. all, kind of upheld the same policies and towards this kind of thing. And so it just became problematic. And so what it came down to is, now my understanding is that when Cache County in 2022 decided to end their contract with ICE, that it was kind of a mutual thing between the county and ICE. The county was unhappy with the way things were paid for at the federal level, and the state wasn't helping. The state had also done Justice Reinvestment Initiative, which was putting an additional burden on the county jails. And it was decided by leadership within Cache County that this is just too much for our jail system to handle. So we're going to end our contract with ICE to house these criminals. They can be housed elsewhere. There are obviously options. And my understanding is that ICE was mutual on that one decision with Cache County because they had another option in Wyoming that they were eyeing up that they preferred for various reasons, transportation and otherwise. And so it wasn't a controversy. I have no idea what was behind the Washington County Sheriff's decision. I would assume it's similar. I do know in 2016, when Utah County decided to end their contract with ICE, it was exactly the same thing. They said, we don't like how this is managed. It leaves us on the hook for costs, and we're already experiencing a staffing shortage because of a lack of proper state funding, and so it's not worth it for us to do this. My point is, there's really nothing controversial about this. There's a debate to be had, for sure. There's a debate to be had about federal immigration policy, and if you're going to have hardline immigration policy, which in the case of many of these people, we should. These are people you don't want out on the streets. Even if you are the most compassionate person towards immigration in general, and feel that we should be welcoming and actually reform our system so it's easier for people to legally migrate into the U.S., and I'm in that boat. These are people you don't want on the street. These are violent criminals oftentimes. These are people with a history of rape. That one individual in Utah County that was cited in 2016 during that debate. If we're going to have these hardline policies, and we should in this case, fund them properly. The federal government doesn't. The state doesn't, I don't think, fund law enforcement in general properly here in the state, and that includes the county sheriff's offices and the county jails. And I understand everybody's trying to be frugal and everybody's trying to keep taxes low, and I think you can do that, but also prioritize some of these things. And so oftentimes county sheriffs and county jails are just left on the hook for a lot of this stuff. But there was no controversy. This was a United States Senate candidate whose fundraising is lagging, who's falling behind in their internal polling, I guarantee it. They realize with Speaker of the House Brad Wilson jumping in the race that they're dead in the water. And this was Riverton Mayor Trent Staggs trying to get some attention for his campaign, abusing the Riverton City letterhead and logo to send this out as if he were sending it out just as a concerned Utah mayor, but ironically targeting it specifically at his opponent in the Senate primary, who's sucking up all the fundraising, Brad Wilson, and who's also Speaker of the House until the end of November. So it's pretty transparent what was going on here. The problem is that the statement basically says, without saying it verbatim, the statement implies that these 3 county sheriffs, Washington County, Utah County, and Cache County, were just opening our borders and turning Utah into a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. Not at all the case. It's unfortunate that the sheriffs would be the target of Trent Stagg's letter, because I remember, again, when we spoke with the Cache County Sheriff's Office here at KVNU and heard that interview here on the show, there was a lot of frustration. It wasn't necessarily their top choice to end the ICE contract. That wasn't the goal. It wasn't a political thing. It was a financial thing. It wasn't feasible. The federal funding is wonky and messed up, and oftentimes not enough. The state funding for other demands on the jail is always too low, and it just doesn't work out. So they ended their contract. It is not a big deal. And again, ICE has other options. In fact, as I understand it, they've transitioned all of this storage. I hate to use that word because we're talking about human beings, even if they're violent criminals. But that's basically what we're talking about, is a place to store these criminals who have been arrested for something else but are also here illegally. It's not safe to put them back out on the street. Court process, deportation process has to play out. That can be lengthy, working with other countries and things like that. And so they have to be housed somewhere. And my understanding is ICE had a preference themselves, and these decisions were mutual. There was not a controversy. Now, as far as the memo goes, it was a memo from an individual at ICE that somehow made its way to Trent Staggs. It was actually published and made public in May. Salt Lake Tribune reported on it back in May. Trent Staggs just saw it last night, apparently, and knee-jerked a statement out on the Riverton City letterhead. Big deal ensued until everybody realized, this is actually an old story. We've already talked about all this, and it's not controversial. The memo, the confusion is that the memo uses the phrase sanctuary state. Now, ICE can't just declare a state a sanctuary state, but ICE has different phrases and terminology they'll use for definitions, and that's used in the memo in a different way than Trent Staggs, the United States Senate candidate, meant it. He meant it in a way to stir up the controversy. ICE meant it a different way. If you read the memo, it's very clear. I've posted these, by the way, both the Trent Staggs statement that he's catching so much heat for today and the memo itself on our Facebook page if you like to read it and make the call for yourself. But I kind of laugh at these things because it always surprises me that candidates don't predict how this will play out, as if no one can Google, as if no one has a memory, as if the sheriffs themselves won't stand up for themselves if they are pressed on this and say, no, we didn't turn Utah into a sanctuary state. What are you talking about? And yet candidates oftentimes will think, none of that's going to happen. This will make me look like a true warrior. No, it made you look like a doofus. 753-5868. Just a little defense of the Cache County Sheriff, because, again, Cache County Sheriff Chad Jensen did not turn Utah into a sanctuary state. If you hear otherwise, just laugh at those people, even if it's a United States Senate candidate. We'll be back right after this.
This is Dr. Red, chiropractic physician with Red River Health and Wellness. Are you suffering with fatigue, brain fog, headaches, intestinal issues, weight gain, and you haven't been able to find any answers?
I was struggling with constantly being hot, struggling with not sleeping, being able to fall asleep, stay asleep, or even wake up the next morning. I had very high levels of inflammation and memory loss. Memory loss was the scariest part.
Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
The sleep improved, my memory's coming back. Every time I remember something, I still get really excited. I go walking every morning now, which I've never done before. I've always really wanted to be that type of person that wakes up early enough to enjoy the sunrise. I get to do that every morning now.
Our goal is to teach you and educate you so you know how to manage your condition a lot more effectively, and you know what to do and what not to do for the rest of your life.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
The Ramsey Show.
It has come to light that there's been financial infidelity from my husband, who got involved in day trading and has subsequently lost about $150,000.
Whoa.
$4,800 a month in minimum payments. It's crippling.
I'm so sorry. You are right to be maniacally angry. And y'all gonna have to heal relationally. You're living in relationship 2.0. Y'all gotta deal with this.
Evenings on KVNU 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. For the People movie show coming up in hour 2 of today's show. And we've got some catching up to do. We've got some new movies in theaters to talk about. And we also have a holiday coming up that kind of sets the stage. But one thing everyone's excited about, and to be honest with you, I don't know why. I was never a huge fan, but in Utah, it has become a cult classic, to say the least. It got a sequel that was not a cult classic, to say the least. It kind of flopped. But here in Utah this weekend, I'm not sure how long it will run. I'm assuming maybe through the month. But you can see Disney's Hocus Pocus, the 30th anniversary edition, on the big screen. That is in theaters here in Logan as well. You can also see The Creator, Paw Patrol, the Mighty Movie, Exorcist, the Believer, which I'm actually hearing good things about, A Haunting in Venice, based on Agatha Christie's novel, The Nun 2, and a really funny movie called Dumb Money, the GameStop story, based on a true story, that will make you laugh and make you mad. So we'll be talking about that all as the movie show gets underway, starting in hour 2. More of the headlines from this week we haven't gotten to yet, after these local headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:30. This look at the news brought to you by U&I Furniture. A new mental health crisis center is coming to South Salt Lake, expected to open in 2025. The new 24/7 Kim and Carolyn Gardner Crisis Center will assist Utahns experiencing mental health challenges and substance addiction. According to the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah, there are over 100,000 Utahns who experience serious mental illness, and over half of Utah adults with poor mental health do not receive treatment or counseling. Executive Director of the Huntsman Mental Health Institute, Ross Van Varenken, says this is a one-of-a-kind facility that will aim to improve those statistics.
This really speaks to the stigma of mental illness and substance use, why a lot of people don't get treatment. And what we're trying to do is make it easy and accessible, and also trying to kind of eliminate that stigma.
There are currently 6 centers in Utah staffed by therapists, nursing staff, and peer counselors who provide treatments to those in need. The Kim and Carolyn Gardner Crisis Center will be the newest place where people can receive treatment rather than being cited or sent to jail. Varenkin says too many people with mental illness have spent unnecessary time in jails or emergency rooms. In addition to clinical and crisis services, the center will also incorporate help provided by free dental and law clinics.
You can imagine a lot of these folks get kind of nuisance charges, and then they don't show up for the hearing, and then they're in contempt and there's a warrant for their arrest. Just kind of cleaning up these nuisance charges to actually prevent them from getting funding and housing and all kinds of other things.
Varenkin says the most critical part to mental health treatment is patient engagement. He adds that those who will work at the Crisis Care Center will develop relationships to ensure those who need care are receiving it. A man was transported to the hospital in critical condition after he was struck by a vehicle in Weber County. Officers with the Harrisville Police Department said they responded to reports of an auto pedestrian incident in the southbound lanes at around 1200 North Washington Boulevard sometime Thursday night. According to police, a 50-year-old man was hit by a car and was transported to the hospital via ambulance in critical condition. No other information on the vehicle that struck the man was released, but officers did confirm that the driver did not sustain any injuries as a result of the crash. The incident is still under investigation by the Weber County Metro Crash Team, and no other details were provided. And many states are shifting their approach to sex education in K-12 schools with stricter regulations on when and what students learn about their bodies. It's a move that has further complicated and polarized sex education. A dozen state or county agencies recently parted ways with federal grants that help monitor teenagers' sexual behaviors and lower rates of STDs. Several states have pushed back the grade level at which sex education begins. Experts say they are concerned students won't reliably learn about adolescents' safe sexual activity or relationship violence. Idaho's Division of Public Health said it no longer administered the HHS grant for personal responsibility education programs, or PrEP, as of July 1st after lawmakers did not approve the spending during the legislative session. KVNU News Time is 4:34.
Is it time to upgrade or transform your dining area? Stop in and browse UNI Furniture's big selection of dining sets. UNI just picked up a spectacular assortment from different brand name manufacturers. They have small tables for two, up to a big table for all family gatherings. UNI has lots of options, some with benches and swivel stools. And make sure you check out the chairs UNI has. Accent chairs, recliners, upholstered chairs, and more. There really is always a better buy at UNI. UNI Furniture in downtown Logan.
The UAW won't expand its strikes against the big three automakers now that General Motors has agreed to unionize electric vehicle battery plants.
The time has come, for the company to get back to the membership.
But that union member in Chicago says it's just a start. A 3-day strike by 75,000 Kaiser Permanente workers is coming to an end without an agreement on better pay or working conditions. Former President Trump's civil fraud trial will continue next week. An appellate judge today rejected a request by Mr. Trump to pause the proceedings while he fights a pretrial ruling which could strip him of Trump Tower and other properties. Police in Baltimore confirmed they are looking for 2 suspects in this week's shooting at Morgan State University. They're also offering a $9,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is putting the rumors to rest. He says he will not resign from Congress and that he plans to run for re-election. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
KVNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies, low around 40, and then sunny, lower 70s tomorrow. Sunday, mid-70s and plenty of sunshine. 69 has been our high. It's 68 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by the Advocates, injury attorneys. Have you been in an accident that was not your fault? Are you worried about how to pay the bills? Take care of your family. You deserve an advocate. Chat online at utawadvocates.com or call 801-355-5550. Get more news at cashvalleydaily.com. Let's check Wall Street now with Edward Jones.
This is Ted Karen with Edward Jones Investments in Smithfield, bringing you the daily financial market report for Friday, October 6th. Stocks fell in early morning trading on Friday, and yields revisited the highs for the year after a strong jobs report, which leaves the door open for another rate hike before the end of the year. However, as investors digested the details of the release, stocks recouped their losses and finished the day higher. Job security and further income gains suggest that households can keep supporting economic growth, while the strong pace of job creation is not translating into renewed acceleration in wage growth. Also helping sentiment is that the United Auto Workers did not expand strikes against the automakers this week, signaling progress in the talks. All sectors rose for the day, with technology and communication services leading the gains. In bonds, the difference between short and long-term yields narrowed the most this year, with the 2-year yield at 5.08% and the 10-year at 4.78%. Elsewhere, West Texas Intermediate crude oil prices rose modestly for the day, but finished the week down almost 9%. their worst weekly performance since March. This has been today's Financial Market Report, brought to you by Ted Karen with Edward Jones, member SIPC, serving individual investors with personalized attention on financial advice. If you'd like additional information, please visit with any of the 7 Edward Jones offices in Cache Valley, in Providence, Logan, and Smithfield.
It's homecoming week for our Utah State Aggies. Saturday night on the turf at Merlin Olsen Field, we go to battle versus Colorado State. Any blue-blooded Aggie will prepare to cheer on the Aggies with a visit to Locker 42, a warm new Aggie jacket or hooded sweatshirt, a new Aggie hat or t-shirt in your choice of Aggie blue or fighting white. Locker 42 has a store full of Aggie gear to outfit the true Aggie. Locker 42, always ready for game day.
If you've recently moved into our community or are attending Utah State, on behalf of the Cache Valley Media Group, we welcome you. As you settle in, we encourage you to support our local businesses. In fact, pick up a free copy of the Best of Northern Utah magazine. Let it be your compass for discovering the best our community has to offer, from quaint bookstores to delicious bakeries, electricians to dentists, coffee shops to florists. These businesses were voted the very best in our community. Go to bestofnorthernutah.com for magazine pickup locations.
Welcome back to KVN News For the People. Again, the For the People movie show coming up at 5 o'clock. A listener chiming in. I was defending the Cache County Sheriff against a Senate candidate, Trent Staggs, who jumped the shark last night with a statement, which he strangely put out on the Riverton City. He's the mayor of Riverton, running for U.S. Senate, and put it out on the Riverton letterhead for some reason, which got him in immediate hot water from the city council there. And I don't know what he was thinking, but he tried to make a mountain out of a molehill. It was an old story. We'd actually covered it here on the show last year. The part of it that ties into Utah County is from 2016. That's how old it is. I assume he didn't read it through. He thought it was something brand new and thought he was breaking news, and he sort of made a fool of himself and made some sheriffs, tried at least to make some sheriffs look bad in the process. Listener chimes in and said, one of my criticisms is, I said this is a candidate just trying to get attention because their campaign's flagging. Their fundraising's dried up already from what I'm seeing. And it's just, once Speaker of the House Brad Wilson jumped in the race, he's too connected. For better or worse, when somebody like that jumps in the race, all the big donors head there. And if you're the unknown challenger, both of these two are going to have trouble statewide because I know who the Speaker of the House is. I know a lot of things Speaker of the House has said and done. I'm holding on to video in case I ever need it of Brad Wilson eye-rolling and claiming a voice vote was a yay when it clearly was not for one of his rich friends in Park City. It was a horrible moment. One of the worst things that you'll see happen in the legislative process is that kind of thing. But most people have no idea who Brad Wilson is. The average registered Republican in this primary probably isn't very familiar with him. I guarantee when it gets to the general election, now he's the Republican, so he'll still win. But when it gets to the general election, it's going to be two people nobody's ever heard of. State Senator Kathleen Reeby, the Democrat, and State Representative and former House Speaker by that time next year, Brad Wilson. So brand new names. Listener says, is it fair to criticize one candidate for trying to get attention? No. I mean, that's the whole point of running for office, right? Especially in an open race like this where you have very little name recognition. Anything a candidate can do to get themselves on the map is going to help, right? And that's obviously what he's trying to do. But the problem is you have to be credible. You have to think these things through. You don't put out an obvious campaign stunt on the letterhead of your current job. It's not illegal, but it's really poor taste. Because people who voted for you for mayor of Riverton voted for you for mayor of Riverton, and they probably didn't vote for you to send out press releases with Riverton's resources to run for United States Senate, to run for higher office. So, yeah, it's just something you don't do. But the worst part, I think, is he had to, if he had thought this through, he would have said to himself, look, I'm going to end up it's going to look like I'm trying to make 3 very conservative sheriffs in Utah. The Cass Sheriff, Washington County Sheriff, and Utah County Sheriff, all conservative Republicans. And they've all run for office repeatedly as conservative Republicans. And if Trent had paused, he would have been able to say to himself, okay, it's going to look like I'm trying to make them look bad. And the real story is that they were just doing their job and made a smart decision to save money and resources. And he didn't. He just saw an opportunity and he jumped. The problem with that, though, so again, a listener says, is it fair to criticize a candidate for trying to get attention? Not at all. In fact, I would be more likely to criticize a candidate for sitting back and not trying to get themselves on the map in an open race where nobody knows your name. Because that's just bad campaigning, and anybody that donated to your campaign, you're wasting their money. You have a responsibility as a candidate to try to get attention, to try and get people to hear your name and talk about you and hear your ideas and where you're coming from. But you have to be credible. You can't pull stunts. Because once you do, everyone starts thinking, does that person have poor judgment? Does that person... Sean Reyes right now is a great example of this, I think. I've met Sean Reyes a lot of times. I've had lengthy conversations with him, both here in the studio, but also working on transparency bills and things like that. He is a very smart guy. He is a very sincere guy. He's a very nice guy. He has a horrible people reader. His people reader is broken, and so he finds himself in these situations, like the news story out just last night, showing that he himself has been under criminal investigation for his ties to Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad for years. And he's never lied about it, but he's tried to keep it quiet. That's just bad judgment when you're the Attorney General. One of your jobs as Attorney General is to protect Utahns from fraud. But what we're finding out is that Sean Reyes knew that their Operation Underground Railroad's entire intelligence operation for a few years now has been a psychic, nothing else, just a psychic. And, of course, none of their missions were panning out. Surprise, surprise, the psychic was wrong. And we also know they were lying to donors. They were fundraising millions of dollars every year up until, a month ago. And for the Attorney General to have known that this was probably, fraud, and to have not said anything to protect Utahns because he's buddies with Tim Ballard, it's a question of judgment and character at that point. And again, I'm saying this as someone who really likes Sean Reyes. I actually find the guy to be really intelligent and he knows his job. And, man, he runs a good office. The people who work for him, if you're going to criticize Reyes, separate him from the Attorney General's office, because that office under Reyes is run really well. But based on some of the things we've learned, I'm starting to think that's because of his chief of staff, not him, because his people reader is broken. This is the guy that got duped by the software developer in Park City. He met at a party who told him he had this software called Banjo that could collect social media and CCTV video and police crime data if they'd let him have access to the crime data they don't make public. And his software could predict crime. And Reyes was so impressed by this, he asked the legislature for $20 million to fund it. Legislature, always doing their job, didn't ask any questions and approved the $20 million. Finally, someone in the Salt Lake Tribune started asking around, hey, what's this $20 million for? And we found out, and luckily the plug got pulled on the whole thing. And then it turns out that the guy behind the Banjo software was a white supremacist, or former white supremacist. He claims he's reformed. Either way, this is not stuff that instills confidence in you and your Attorney General. That job specifically, you want somebody with good judgment, someone who can smell fraud, right? Not fall for it. So that, I think, is what is kind of missing in politics today. This, basing who you support on character and signs that they have good judgment, signs that they make smart decisions, that they're thinkers, that they're thoughtful. As opposed to just, they have the right letter next to their name and they say the right rah-rah things on TV that get me all giddy. We need to raise our bar, I think. So, to the listener's question again, no, I don't think it's wrong for a candidate like Trent Staggs to try and get attention. I think it would be malpractice if he wasn't trying to get attention, and every donor would deserve an apology for it from him. But do it in a credible way. Don't try to create a scandal where there is none. Don't send it out on your city's letterhead to try and give it more credibility than it has, which is why he did that. Just campaign. Be normal. Campaign. If your ideas are truly more popular, voters are smart. They'll pick up on that. Just go out and talk about your ideas. When you pull a stunt, it honestly, the effect it has on voters is, okay, so your ideas aren't going to sell me. You're trying to trick me into voting for you. That doesn't instill confidence, right? So there's my criticism for that. Check this story out. It's Pioneer Bones was the headline at CashValleyDaily.com. And, I mean, how can you not click on a story with that headline, right? This was actually kind of a cool story of an accidental discovery in Providence. A construction crew, and there again, more details in the story than I'll be able to cover here fully, but a construction crew stumbled across, or dug across, rather, a set of bones. It was in Providence, and law enforcement was brought in. I mean, obviously, you find skeletal remains in the earth. Well, if you're smart, your first call is to law enforcement, right? And Cache County Sheriff's Lieutenant Mickelson Barchi said a group of employees, this was LeGrand Johnson Construction Company, they were replacing a fire hydrant at the south end of Providence, and as they were digging, they found skeletal remains about 4 feet below the surface. So they're called to the scene. The area was sealed off as a crime scene, which is, procedure. Everything was photographed. The pictures were sent to a forensic laboratory before anything was moved, even touched. And they were confirmed to be human, at which point a forensic anthropologist was brought in to the construction site the next day. And they did some tests on the bones and determined them to be really old, Pioneer era. And they appeared... I'm assuming based on how they were laid out or their positioning, that it was determined that this was an intentional burial site. This was a grave that they had dug up, and the age of the remains was determined, and then they also determined there was no foul play. The criminal case or criminal investigation was closed, and the bones have now been turned over to the forensic anthropologist from the state. I didn't know this, though. The sheriff's lieutenant said this isn't the first time that human remains have been discovered in Cache Valley. Years ago, I'd never heard this before. You build the construction crews in the north end of the valley, doing some more deep digging repair work, dug up what they discovered after talking with anthropologists and more was an old Indian burial ground in the north part of Cache Valley.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, when
that happened.
I'd never heard that before. So, but it's in the story here from KVN News. Will Feel Right at CashValleyDaily.com. Not a headline you see every day. Pioneer bones discovered by a construction crew. We'll be back right after this.
The people have spoken. Steel-coated epoxy floors of Cache Valley is the 3-time gold medalist for Best of Northern Utah. Known for their extremely durable floor coating systems, they can completely transform your concrete, garages and shops, porches and patios. They coat it all. With over 25 years of operation, Steel-coated epoxy floors is Cache Valley's premier coating professionals. Contact Steel-coated Floors of Cache Valley today. Find them online at scfcachevalley.com or call 435-512-1284.
Hi there, we're your new neighbors, the Voles. I'm Horrible, and this is my wife, Terrible. Hi! It's been such a great summer, we gotta have an army of children. Now we're fixing to tear up your yard. The only warning sign of us is some surface tunneling holes, and then boom! Yard death! What do you think? Should we get started, Ma? Yep. These guys aren't going to call it troops at Logan Extermination.
Voles are a problem. They can tear up your lawn and garden. But there is something you can do. Call Logan Extermination at 752-8450.
The event of the year for manufacturers in Northern Utah is almost here. Attend the second annual Northern Utah Manufacturing Excellence Conference, Wednesday, October 25th. Collaborate with manufacturing leaders and resource experts. Enjoy lunch and a keynote from Ken Snyder, Shingo Institute Executive Director. When we strengthen Utah manufacturing, we strengthen Utah's economy. Register today for the NUME Conference on October 25th from 8 to 1 at the Cache County Event Center at cashchamber.com.
If you're near retirement or thinking about retiring, you probably have questions. How do you make your savings last? How much should you take out and when? You're ready for retirement, but are your finances? Your Edward Jones financial advisor can help you build a strategy to help your finances keep up with your long-term needs. You've done what it takes to get there. Now it's time to make the most of retirement. Call one of the 7 Edward Jones branch locations in Cache Valley or go to edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Welcome back to KVN News for the people. Again, just a beautiful day out there. Some good news. Well, maybe. We'll see. Utah home prices fell for two good reports today for the nation, for Utah. So the jobs report, first of all, this was now I know with an election around the corner that Republicans probably aren't happy about this. The jobs report today, man, had President Biden just crowing almost literally on TV. I caught a little bit of it just in the background while it was a job site, and it's surely going to get political, but it was. For consumers, put the politics aside for a second, really good news. A really good jobs report. Consumer confidence through the roof still. In fact, the only concerning thing is that, now this has been a trend since the pandemic, and I have no idea what could be behind this, but the use of credit is still high. Not dangerously high, the state economists say, here in Utah or nationwide, but higher, and no one really knows why, because wages are also higher. Unemployment is near historic lows and has been for some time. There's more concern about this bubble popping in the next year or two than there is about a recession. And that's all good stuff. And consumer confidence, again, people are spending money like crazy. But what we do know is that in parts of the country, most of the country actually, and especially here in Utah, one thing people aren't buying are houses. And that's bad for a lot of different reasons. But Utah's home prices, in a report out today, tipped down. Now, just a tiny little bit. Even though this is nationwide still considered the worst housing market for affordability in 4 decades, primarily due to the fact that no state has been building enough of it for the population growth every state is seeing. And 6 straight months in a row, home prices in most of Utah's Wasatch Front communities ticked down a tiny little bit. So headed in the right direction. Not enough to make a difference for home buyers, sadly, but it's better than having them tick up a little bit, which is what they've been doing pretty consistently for almost a decade now, with a few dips here and there. So Salt Lake County, Utah's most populous county, the median price of homes fell to about $520,000 last month. This report is just looking at everything month to month, the month previous. And that's about a 1% drop. But that's also on top of what was a 2% drop between August and July. So good news again. Statewide single-family home median price figure dropped to $600,000 last month, which still sounds really high, but that's 1% down from the same month a year ago, and 2% down from where they were at in July, just a few months ago. So That is from the statewide Board of Realtors. So they're actually called the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, but they look at, like the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce, it's a statewide organization. They look at statewide data. They're also, so in the report, they also show that there's a pretty obvious high toll for high mortgage rates on sales. That's holding back a lot of sales. And as far as those sales themselves, the report shows that transactions on all housing types are down 11% from this time last year. So an 11% dip in, now that's all housing sales, which includes rentals, short-term purchases where you're leasing, but you're paying for the full price for a year or two, outright purchases, all included, down about 11% from this time last year. So state economists are hoping that this continues, at which point you might see the home purchase percentage tick up month by month. But until we see that, we still remain in a nasty housing market. Over the last 5 years, by the way, Utah's home prices have increased 72%. The 2 years prior to that, they only went up 35%. So, yeah, it does have state economists concerned about one thing as well. They're worried that this could be a long-term, even generational trend, where kids, graduating high school, or even those a bit older, young adults graduating college, they aren't even thinking about home ownership anymore because it's just not something that's in the cards for them unless they get extremely lucky. The economists say that could have a pretty significant effect on Utah's economy, mainly because the workers, as these people hit middle age, are going to be more mobile, meaning they're going to be more willing to leave the state for a higher paying job. It could create some competition, could also take some businesses with them, unfortunately. So some concern over these housing prices and the increasing rates, but ticking down 1% at least month to month from last month to this. For the People movie show up next here on KVNU Logan.